Welcome to today's Goal Setting Part 3 of 4 with Lisa Sarimi. My name is Nicole and I'm on the Access Elite team that has brought this event to you today. For those of you who aren't familiar, Access Elite is a health and wellness company. We provide on-demand wellness content, same-day prescription delivery, and facilitate live virtual events such as these, as well as much more. We at Access Elite are so excited to facilitate this event and bring a little bit of positivity and connection to your day. So I just want to take a moment and thank you all for joining us. I'm thrilled to introduce our guest today. Lisa is a transformational coach, a marriage and family therapist, and a yoga therapist. And with that, Lisa, please take it away.
Thank you so much. It's so exciting to be here. Happy New Year to all of you. And for those of you that have been moving through this goal workshop series, here we are in 2021, and we are going to be diving into the third piece of the series today. So I hope that we'll be doing a little review like we normally do, but I hope that you've been taking the time to really connect to the things that are important to you, your values, and really allowing that to be uncovered in the space that we've had so that we can work with that as we dive a little farther into our workshop today. So with that said, the focus is going to be a vision and the power of image, and really how do we harness that to contribute to our goals and what we're creating for ourselves in the future. And we'll do a little review today, tapping into the law of attraction, revisiting those core values, or the 5 core values you might have boiled it down to, our value wheel. And then how do we harness all of that in alignment with our vision? How do we use image to magnify the potency of what we're consciously wanting to attract in? And then how do we define our vision using images and letting those images really ignite our feelings, which what we find with the law of attraction is a really important ingredient when we're putting the magnet out there of what we want. So let's just start with the law of attraction to bring it forward and back into our space. This really is a law that is always happening, right? So just like gravity, it's always in motion. And most of the time, we're just not really conscious that it is in motion and that we are contributing to attracting all the things that we have in our lives. So we can't really take a break from it, but we can harness it. We can start to use it to work for us. We can use it because our minds, they're just like a magnet. And there's always an exchange of messages of what we're wanting and what we're, well, maybe not always what we're wanting, but what we're attracting. And our attention is part of that, that recipe. What we focus on, we attract. So what we give our attention to, we cultivate more of. And when we're not conscious about that, sometimes we are sending out the thoughts and emotions of not really what we actually want, not really what we want to experience in our life. So by just bringing our consciousness here, we can start to harness our attention. It's one of the few things we can control. And where our attention goes, we'll really see our energy flows. So we spent the last session really diving into our values and how they inform our today's. And how they look or don't look in alignment to the different categories of our life, we'll get into in a moment here. But considering that our values are just like our personal fingerprint, right? It's our values. Nobody else gets to define what we find is important. And a lot of times our values are going to direct our attention. So we took some time to reflect. We looked at a very big list of them, and then we boiled it down to our top 5. So maybe you can remember what those are. Maybe you are just joining us today and that's a little bit of more work you want to do, is really just take a little time and identify what are your core values. What are the things that are most important to you that define your philosophy? And then how do these values inform your thoughts, your actions, your behaviors? And then the wheel to the right is really just breaking down the most common areas in our lives that are important. For some of us, maybe certain areas are more important than others, and you can modify the pie space of your wheel. And then what we want to look at is in each one of these categories, are we in alignment with our values? And really allow this taking of inventory to help us identify maybe the top 3 areas that we want to focus on going into 2021. The top 3 areas that could use a little more of our attention so that we can harness a little more harmony and bring in a little more balance. And so, Carl Jung, he's definitely one of my teachers that I study deeply and have in the work that I do. I love this quote. He says, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will control your life and call it fate, and you will call it fate." And so that's part of what the peeling back the layers of the values are, because they can kind of sit in our unconscious. And those values are deeply connected to our beliefs and our thoughts. And again, that most important thing, where our attention and our energy is going, right? So we want to bring the consciousness forward so that we can really see if there is alignment. Because then when we can see where things are out of aligned, we can see the refinement that needs to take place in our vision, so that we can harness our vision, and we can actually begin to define it. So we want to first, there's 4 steps to harnessing your vision. 1, you want to first just begin to write it down. Maybe on a piece of paper, just put your name in big letters, like Lisa Dreams Bigger, and then just start to write down maybe the headlines and outline. I really like to work with words. So when I was looking at my 2021, some words that really resonated for me was consistency, completion, and there was one more that I'm not remembering right now, but I do have them, and they are a part of this process that I've also been going through to really design my 2021. Because once you start to write it down, the things like the words help me inform the images and the vision that I'm really wanting to cultivate. And when you write it down as if it's in the future. Our next session, we're going to be working more a little bit on how do we turn this vision into actual goals. But in the meantime, while you're starting to harness your vision, right? It's just getting that visual, that big picture. You can start to create even an action plan if you're inspired, if there's ideas, if there's messages that come forward and you get really clear, if there's inspiration. That's the next part of harnessing our vision, is actually putting a plan of action into place. Because it's one thing to have the vision up here, but we got to anchor it down into our 3D reality. And ritual and action are really powerful ways to do it. The third step is, once we create that plan, is we need to make sure we're set up for success. We want a supportive environment. We want to enroll the people in our lives that are holding that container and contributing to us really taking that vision and turning it into our reality. And then with all of that, it's so important that we have scheduled time outs, scheduled time for just space to exist, to let go of the doer and maybe drop into the beer, so that you can let things kind of metabolize as you're in your process of harnessing your vision. Another way, or another addition to the approach, is also to really contribute to getting your energy or the juices flowing, to get that vision like really present for you. And how do we do it? We ask questions. We ask really big questions. A lot of our days actually are informed by the questions that we're asking. So here are some questions to add to your day or your process. If you were to cast yourself 10 years ahead, 10 years into your future, can you imagine and describe, and this is as you work with each category of your life that you've kind of boiled things down to, focusing on, how would you describe that particular aspect of your life so that you would feel extremely good about yourself? So just taking a net into the future, 10 years from now, picking an area, maybe it's romance, maybe it's relationships with family, maybe it's your health, maybe it's your career, maybe it's finances. If you were to look into the future in that particular aspect of your life and you were feeling really good about yourself, how would you describe it? What are the words? What are the images that come forward? And what are the feelings that come forward? And then how would that be an improvement of how you feel about that area right now? Now, chances are when you went through the value process and we did the value wheel and you really looked at the different areas of your life, this is most likely an area that showed you or that you connected to, you were like clear that it was not in full harmony and alignment or a reflection of how you want it to be, right? So you want to just really sit with how would that vision of yourself 10 years into the future be an improvement of what that part of your life is like right now. And then question number 3, what do you need to change for this part of your life to be the way you want it to be? Is there a belief system? See, that's the power of working with that unconscious content. When we start to go into our vision, we also have to sometimes look at what is there that's blocking, that's in the way, you know? Where does there need to be change? Insanity, I remember I learned the definition of this one 20 years ago. It's just doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, right? So sometimes there is change that would serve us, right? And a lot of times it's subtle change. It's the little things that we do every day that really start to have their potency in our lives. So what are these changes? Really being honest with yourself about what they look like and what it would need to look like. And then the 4th question, how will you feel 10 years from now if you take no action in this area? And so by default, that means it's just going to continue going the way that it has. And there's a cost, right? And it's not always a financial cost, although there could be a financial cost. Can you describe that personal cost? The cost on your sense of well-being, on your happiness, on your peace of mind. So really, this is getting the juices flowing is really tough because sometimes it's asking hard questions and it's really looking at the actual in our lives, in our realities, what's happening, and then being able to forecast into the future. If you remember with the law of attraction, a lot of what we're doing is we're just taking the past and forecasting it into the future and we're fueling it with the emotions, right? So now here we are, we're creating a vision in our future and we're fueling it with emotions, but we're actually doing it consciously and intentionally, right? Really getting down to what does it feel like to feel extremely good or to feel extremely in harmony or in balance or whatever those words are that really inspire you. And then it's using different, remember we were talking about how sometimes things are up here, they're in our visions, they're in our thoughts and our dreams, but we want to bring them into reality. And I mentioned ritual. Well, what we really want to do is we want to take the imagination and in some way be able to make it a more cathartic experience. And we can do that using images. We can do that using our imagination. And we can do that using our voice. In fact, we're doing it all the time, except a lot of times our imagination is taking us into fearful spaces that aren't serving us, that are keeping us small. And with those, with that imagination, we are cultivating images that maybe are things that we really don't want. And we're giving it our emotions. And then when we speak our fears and we dive into these types of dialogues with the people in our lives, or even just with like social media or the news, we're actually doing this formula. So it's not, this isn't new information. You guys, we're all doing it every day. The question is are we doing it with our consciousness? This one gift that we have that really differentiates us from all the other animals, our ability to actually create a narrative and to bring our creative juices forward and fully consciously participate in what we're creating. And images, of course, speak more than words, right? So we can use images to really capture feelings and even literally down to physically what we might want. So vision boarding, it's something, or collaging, that I've been doing for many years. I do it with my clients. I'm a big advocate of using images. I'm a depth trained psychologist. And so we work with image. We work with image because image helps us connect to the psyche in a way that words are limiting. And so there's a lot of different ways you can play with image. I'm sure most of us are familiar with the traditional vision board. You can really get fancy with your vision boarding. You can get like a palette, you know, like one of those big palettes, wood, and use that and make it a complete art piece. You can do it really simple and just grab like a board from the grocery store. You can go through old magazines and just allow yourself to connect to images that kind of you have a little chemistry with, right? A little draw towards an expression of something that you want to draw in, something that inspires emotion inside of you. That is what the images do. They inspire the emotion, and it's the emotion. So okay, so we do the vision boarding. We sit down. In fact, I'm leading a workshop here in January, and that's what we're going to do. We're all going to get together, and we're going to just work with images and music and let those creative juices flow. And then in that moment, you're birthing something. It doesn't mean that you can't add or you can't change things as you go, but you want to have that board or that piece somewhere where you can see it, so that when you wake up and your mind wants to go to all the other places, that the minute you see that board, you see that visual, it invokes the emotions. It gives you the ability, maybe for a moment, to just connect to, wow, if it was happening right now, what would that feel like in my body? If I was on those islands, on one of those bungalows, right, on that board right there, like right now, if you were there right now, what would that feel like? What would that feel like in your body? What would that feel like in your heart? How can you sit in that for a moment? Rather than, a very simple difference would be if you sat and you just looked at that image and you sat in the wanting. We're still doing it, right? Maybe we have the image on our board and there it is, but like we can't sit with what would it feel like to actually be there right now? And we just look at the image and it's invoking the feeling of want. So I wanted to bring that forward because when we're working with images, vision boards are powerful, but they're really powerful when you use the images to allow yourself to feel like what it would feel like if that was your life right now, if those things were happening right now, not 10 years from now, but you allow your imagination and those creative juices to give you the ability to dream into a future that isn't even here yet, right? That you're actually creating right now. And as I was saying, those images, they ignite feelings. Words can ignite feelings too, tonality and all of those things. And so declaration is important. It's important that we share our dreams and that we speak our dreams and we bring in that emotion of really feeling as if it's possible. You have to believe it to achieve it. If you don't believe it, it's hard to actually fulfill it, right? Because if you don't believe you can never have it, you're just going to keep giving your attention to that I'm never going to have it feeling. So what you want to do is you want to allow yourself to feel what it feels like with all of your senses to be there right now. And from there, when we allow ourselves to feel it, we actually can use our imagination to change our physiology and change the chemistry, which is what our emotions are in our bodies. It's really, really powerful work. So that kind of wraps up our session for today. We are going to get into goal creation next session. So I really encourage you, if you have been doing this work, to continue to peel back the layers. Take this week, start to connect to images, start to really feel what you want, and find the images that are an expression of that. And start to create that vision and harness that vision. And then the next session, we're going to get into, okay, so now that we have the vision, how do we create an action plan and some goals that are going to help keep us in check so that when we take when we check in, we can see where we're at in our process. Wonderful. I will give it back to Nicole and I will open it up for any questions that anybody might have or comments or anything like that in relationship to maybe your own process.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lisa. I love the way you introduce the ideas. They really do feel like bite-sized pieces that we can take from and learn from and actually apply to our lives. Sometimes these concepts do feel a little overwhelming to dig into.
Yes, I agree.
Do we have any questions or any other feedback for Lisa today?
Just wanted to say hi and Happy New Year, and thank you, because this is going to get me back on track after having a little break, over the past week or so.
Absolutely.
Like Nicole says, it's a little daunting, right, to start it and maybe just break it up. I'm thinking of starting to break it apart in little sections, like today I write a couple sentences and hopefully, like you say, the creative juices start flowing and I'll feel more comfortable just writing more. Yeah.
Yeah, even like I find just narrowing down like maybe 3 words or 4 words that if you looked back, you were like, oh, wow, this really describes my 2021. And then from there, like as you just start to look at images, or one of the things I do, Camille, is I'll go on Google and I'll just type. So I'll come up with the words and then I go on Google and I just start to look at the images that Google brings up. And then I'll just create my own little virtual collection of images, and then I print them out and I cut those and do magazines.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. That's a great idea. I was thinking I don't have magazines because everything is digital now.
Google, it's even better.
Perfect. We'll do it. Thank you so much, Lisa. Great to see you.
You too, Camille.
And thank you, Lisa, and thank you everyone for joining us today.